It was important for information to reach the West. We tried to help get some Izdat up and running, which by that time had basically been crushed in Moscow. We gave information, and anything that came from Moscow was considered to be serious, without doubt.
It was very important that it was a non-Jewish mouthpiece, because the Express Chronicle, which was gaining momentum at that time, and many other publications, basically got their information from us.
I think the main result of Mashka's activity was the fact that Mashka was the only group of people that took on this heaviest burden of transitioning from the old Soviet life to perestroika and post-perestroika life.
I also remember these interesting facts that nobody knows. For example, the help provided by Finnish Christians to the Jewish underground movement. This bulletin that you see here was brought here by Finnish Christian groups that came as tourists from Finland. This bulletin was fixed to their bodies in a special way. They wrapped their bodies with bandages as much as they could carry. There was one woman, I saw her unloading. The record was 600 of them. She looked like a plus-sized woman, but when she took all that out, when we unwrapped all those bandages, she turned out to be this very thin girl. At some stage of perestroika, we had already established contact with members of different governmental bodies, and primarily the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. These contacts were letting us know they sympathized with us. There were a few of them, but the most outstanding was Vladimir Tumarkin. I hope you will meet him.
All these different fields were assigned, and I got to deal just with human rights and with cultural cooperation. So, the refuseniks were the first group, the growing social movements, operational data about all kinds of underground classes, Hebrew schools and such, emigration that was being hindered. So the problems that were created by legislation or by special decrees or orders that arranged everything in the most horrible way. Everyone who was allowed to leave, all these fees you had to pay for higher education, turning in your medals, basically taking away people's degrees and diplomas, and lots of other horrible, unjust things. Back then, we were already designing the prototype for future laws about immigration and emigration. The first task was to clear off the nonsense skin that grew around all these issues and to figure out the more or less real state of these affairs. There were so many problems, such as the existence of first departments, the secret service branches, the crazy number of different ranks of secrecy and possession of state secrets, military secrets, business secrets. The level of access to such documents, which automatically meant being banned from leaving the country. And it also meant a refusal when applying for permission to emigrate. There was a case when I abused my official position. There was a department that dealt with emigration and immigration. People went there for interviews, so I called, introduced myself and asked if I could stop by and ask about a sensitive matter. When I got there, I had this icy feeling, thinking that I would leave empty-handed. This man lifted his head from the desk. "Why do you need this? Who is he to you?" And I said, "You know, he's nobody, not a distant relative, nobody, but he helps the common cause, so to say. So maybe by way of exception." This was a cliché used in correspondence and such. By way of exception. You can let him out? And who will pay with their party membership card? And I said, "Do you want me to point at myself? Well, at least.
And was it often that you had to put your membership card on the table?
Not often, but there were a few cases, very memorable ones. The life of people who didn't hide it, who said that yes, they were Jews, that they were deprived or ostracized when entering a college or finding a new job, and who then chose some sort of a way to stand up and defend their ethnic identity.
We knew and understood that there was a struggle at the level of the Central Committee and the Politburo when it came to the issue of Jews. The primary matter, of course, was letting the refuseniks go. There were a few thousand of them. And finally, the second matter was to allow the Jews to have the opportunity for self-realization as an ethnic autonomy. There was a struggle between the supporters of Ligachev. It was the group of Ligachev, Kryuchkov, Puga and others, and Yakovlev's group with Gorbachev joined. But precisely in the matter of the Jews, Mikhail Gorbachev took Yakovlev's side. And apparently it was thanks to Alexander Yakovlev, as well as to the rather active support from Shevardnadze. I would like to mention this person too, that the doors finally opened. First of all, for the departure of those people who had been fighting for the right to emigrate. That is, the majority of refuseniks were let out of the country, and most importantly, it was followed by the permission to create Jewish ethnic institutions. First, the Jewish Cultural Association was registered. Next followed the Society of Friendship and Cooperation with Israel. Then there was the famous conference in Riga that created the foundation and prepared basically all the documents for the first Congress of VAAD.
I think that our whole independent Jewish movement in its institutionalized form came out of Mashka, just as Russian writers came out from Gogol's overcoat.
Yulia Kosharovsky tragically died in 2014. Tatiana Dettelstein also passed away in the same year. Mikhail Chlenov and Roman Spektor are still active at the Jewish movement in Russia. Alexander Shmukler is the president of National Coalition Supporting Eurasian Jewry, and Yulia Edelstein is the speaker of Israel's Knesset. Life goes on, so does Jewish life, and we cherish the memory of those who have passed away. This was Parallels Events People, and I'm your host, Natella Baltянska.
Move over wind and solar. A new power player in renewable energy is about to make some waves.
In terms of purely how much power can be extracted from the ocean, that number is pretty massive. It's about 15% of global demand.
During the project, Ray and Tim Munden had a company called Oscilla Power. With support from the National Science Foundation, they're developing a utility-scale wave energy harvester called the Triton.
The West Coast is really where the gold mine is in the U.S., where you've got great high-energy waves and you've got growing demand for electricity.
Here at their Seattle workshop, the team is working hard to hone the design and build the components. They have a few rounds of tests under their belt, both in indoor tanks and open water. But the technical challenges are daunting. Pounding surf and corrosive salt water are tough on machines.
It's a very, very multidisciplinary engineering problem. You have hydrodynamics, you have mechanical engineering, you have civil structures, you have electrical engineering, you have composites, you have materials science, and all sorts of different areas that have to come into play in order to make something that works.
And the technology has to do more than just work. It has to work at the right price.
For wave energy to do what it's capable of doing, costs need to come down on the order of 10 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour or lower.
The Triton uses an electromagnetic process called magnetostriction. A floating platform houses generators made of a special metal alloy. Tethers connect that to a heavy ring called a heave plate.
The heave plate actually wants to sit still, and what results is changes in tether tension that happen continuously as waves interact with the device. And it's that tether tension change that we tap into to create electricity.
It's a sturdy system with few moving parts, rugged enough to stand up to harsh seas with little need for maintenance.
So here's just a schematic representation of our system.
The team plans more tests with increasingly larger and more sophisticated prototypes. At full scale, each Triton system will be 30 yards wide and will power more than 650 homes.
Ultimately, what wave energy offers is an opportunity to take a very large resource that hasn't been a part of the mix today and isn't really been considered in that sense, and allow it to play a role.
Tapping the ocean for clean power at a competitive price. It's an electrifying prospect. For Science Nation, I'm Miles O'Brien.
Thomas Alva Edison is considered America's greatest inventor. He's best known for creating the first long-lasting electric light bulb in 1879, but he also invented and perfected more than 1,000 other products. His favorite, historians say, was the phonograph, the first machine that could capture sound and play it back. This 1888 recording is believed to be the earliest existing recording of Thomas Edison's voice. Edison was also one of the first inventors of the motion picture camera.
I'm here at the Thomas Edison National Historical Park in New Jersey, where behind me is a 3-story lab that helped produce some of Edison's most famous inventions.
National Parks traveler Micah Meyer spent a day immersing himself in Edison history at the inventor's home and laboratory.
It is a fitting place to take a video on a cell phone, because if it wasn't for Edison's invention, this phone and the electricity that charges it wouldn't exist.
Much of the site has been kept intact.
He had this amazing library there that kept all of his records, and then you went right next door in the factory. Everything was in-house. So they were designing, they were building, they were shipping, all from this one location.
With 400,000 artifacts and over 5 million pages of documents, the site looks very much as it did when Edison was working here. Also on the property is the Black Maria, considered to be the world's first building constructed solely for the production of movies.
It was designed on a pivot and turn system so that it could capture the direct sunlight as easily as possible to make the films.
Edison's early attempts at movie making helped set the stage for the remarkable achievements that have been made in filmmaking since then, and made possible just about every form of digital media that permeates modern culture today. Julie Tabo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, my day is generally very, very packed. I generally think about what I have to do over the next 15 or 16 hours that I'll be at work, and I also think about the surprises that my field of science and medicine often have waiting for me. Well, there's no doubt, if you look at the history of public and global health, vaccines are one of the, if not the most important intervention that has ever been developed for any public health issue. Now, West Nile virus was never in the United States till 1999. It was in the West Nile area of Africa and in the Middle East, and it came over to the United States, likely through a mosquito or a bird or a person who was infected. And we had a few cases for the first couple of years, and then we had an outbreak a couple of years after it arrived, and now it's endemic at a low level in the United States. It isn't a major public health threat, but it is enough of an issue that we get enough cases each year, and that's the reason why we have to have good mosquito control. We tried to make a vaccine and would have made a vaccine for West Nile years ago, but we couldn't find a pharmaceutical company that was interested in partnering with us. What people need to understand about Zika is it's important to protect pregnant women. It is likely that Zika was in Africa and in Southeast Asia for decades and decades before we had the first recognized outbreak. In the United States, we have close to 700 already travel-related cases. We've had local outbreaks of dengue and chikungunya in Florida and in Texas, and we've been able to successfully contain it. I believe we need to do the same thing, and will do the same thing, with Zika. I work 7 days a week, and I've been doing that for a very long period of time. I don't really relax much, so I'm a proud workaholic. That's what I do right now. The challenges are too many. I watch my diet reasonably well. I'm about the same weight that I was when I graduated high school, and that was a very long time ago. I like to run, so I'm a runner. I've been running for many years. I've run several marathons, many 10Ks, and I continue to make sure that I every day do something that is exercise related. I think I have a very good sense of humor, and I laugh at a lot of things. I think just the surprises in life, the things that you don't know whether to laugh or cry because it's so ridiculous, those are the kind of things that make me laugh. The hope that I have for the discipline for which I'm responsible in infectious diseases is the elimination of those diseases that are controllable. I want to see the elimination of polio. I want to see HIV no longer be an epidemic and pandemic as we know it. I want to see an era of the end of AIDS. I don't think we'll ever be able to completely eliminate infectious disease. That's unreasonable, but we can do a lot more to alleviate the suffering associated with infectious diseases.
This is Everyday Grammar. I'm Kaveh.
And I'm Lucia.
Lucia, I asked around about what we should talk about today.
Yes, me too. I checked out a bunch of subjects, and you know what I came up with?
I don't want to cut in, but I think we should get into phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are very common in English. There are over 5,000 phrasal verbs, and they're usually used in informal language.
Wow! Are we going to go over all of them today?
No, I don't think we can get around to that. But we'll go into how to identify them and use them.
A phrasal verb is a verb followed by a preposition or an adverb or both.
I ran into my old friend at the mall.
Mom,
Can I sleep over at my friend's house tonight?
Some phrasal verbs allow an object to separate the phrase. They have to stay together.
But it's easy to get confused. Some phrasal verbs have more than one meaning.
So how do you tell the difference?
You have to consider the context of the sentence. For example, look up the word in the dictionary. Here, look up is a phrasal verb. That means to research.
But if you said, look up, the stars are beautiful, you are using the literal meaning of look up.
Both Kaveh and I use a ton of phrasal verbs in this episode. Can you identify them?
This is Border Crossings. My name is Larry London, and I'll be your host for today's show as we welcome a music star from the 1980s, whose hits include Every Time I Think of You, Change, Back on My Feet Again, and of course, the #1 song, Missing You. John Waite's name might not be easily recognizable, but his smash hits and his unique vocal styling certainly are. From his days with Bad English and the Babies to his own solo recordings, John Waite has toured with Ringo Starr and many other music giants. John's music has topped the US and UK charts, and he's on tour today, and he joins us for a live performance and interview. Stay tuned for John Waite on today's Border Crossings.
I put my heart on hold.
Hi, this is Larry London. Welcome to Border Crossings, and what a great show we've got for you today. I'm very excited myself because I'm a fan of this man and his music over the years, going back as far as the 70s. And we welcome to D.C. and to Border Crossings and to the worldwide VOA audience, John Waite. Welcome to our studios.
Oh, it's great to be here, Larry. Thanks.
It's a pleasure to meet you in person. I have been playing your songs with the Babies and with Bad English for many, many years. And
so have I.
So have you. Probably many more times, I'm sure, than I have. But I love the songs. I love your music.
Thanks.
I love your sound and everything that you've been putting out. And are you on tour now for a new album?
There's a greatest hits called Best. and that's like 12 songs that span the whole career. That's just come out, that's in the shops. And we got one called Wooden Heart Volume 2, which is like a retrospective. It's an acoustic anthology. And Missing You's on there, Isn't It Time, some of the really big songs, and then some of the obscure songs from past albums that are acoustic. It's an amalgam of like new cuts and old cuts. But it's a beautiful record. It came out of nowhere. It only took a day and a half to record the 6 songs that are on the 12 tracks. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was going in there to cut 4 tracks for an EP, because the Volume 1 was an EP. And it became 6 tracks, and then I just added these other tracks in, and it was this album. But it's like, it's Spartan, it's stripped down. Sometimes it's just me and one guitar. A lot of it is just me and one guitar. But it's got something that I didn't expect it to have, and it's really kind of an experience listening to it. It really surprises me. It happens so fast.
What's the vibe on the new album? I know you've kind of evolved over your career, and for a while it was rock, and then you did a little bluegrass, and you worked with Alison Krauss. So, you know, where's the new sound for these days?
Well, no, I started off on the acoustic. You know, I really did. My cousin Michael Deegan is with the Temperance 7, which is a trad jazz band in England that were big in the 50s and stuff, but he's the banjo player. And when I was a kid, he was a painter who went to art school, but he'd play me Jimmy Rogers songs and Hank Williams and Big Bill Brunsey, and it all came from this national big acoustic guitar with a resonator, and then he would play like acoustic. But I grew up listening to that before I heard rock and roll. So when I look back to the key things that motivate me musically, it's always on the acoustic guitar. Even as far back as the Babies, the best songs were all written on the acoustic. And left to my own devices, I would play like country or folk or Celtic music or blues. But country blues, not so much electric blues like Chicago blues, it'd be Delta, you know? So it all comes from this. And as I got older, especially when I got out of Bad English, when that broke up, I went straight back to the acoustic. It was so natural. I was living in New York City, and the reason for playing the acoustic at that point, other than just I loved it, was that you couldn't make a lot of racket at 2 in the morning. You know, people would knock on the doors and you'd get evicted, you know, so I had the acoustic with me all the time. But it spoke to me, and it always has. And so at this point in my life, when I don't need to sort of do anything other than what I want to do, you know, this is what I'm doing now. It's just gone back to what I loved as a kid.
What's the name of the new album?
It's called Acoustic Anthology, Wooden Heart Volume 2.
Excellent. Well, and that leads me to believe there's going to be Volume 3.
Yeah,
4,
no,
5.
I mean, I'm already thinking about that. We got some downtime in November and December, and there's so many songs, you know. I mean, I got some of the songs that I want to recut from the Babies, like You. There's songs that are just beautiful songs I'd like to sort of update and just bring out without any orchestration or, like, backbeat. Just the acoustic, it speaks so truly, you know. I want to get back to that. And there's new songs I've written, and all of the new songs are like on the acoustic, but they're kind of rock songs. It's not like I'm country, but I'm influenced by country. The intention of country is like storytelling, and I've always had that. I've always been able to like tell a story in a song, and I didn't realize till recently that's where it came from. It's really an honest acquisition, you know. It's like something that happened to me as a kid. Cowboy songs, you know, Marty Robbins. They're all story songs, you know. So the natural thing for me to do is tell stories. But it works on the acoustic, not so much on the electric.
Yeah, there's not many storytelling guitar-based bands these days. I mean, you know, you have an artist like Ed Sheeran, for example.
Yeah.
He tells stories, plays the guitar. So it's
you get
great.
it in country. You get it in country and you get it in bluegrass. But in rock's something else.
Yes.
Rock, unless you like Bob Seger, who can like... and obviously Bruce Springsteen. There are people that really own that.
The legends,
Bob Dylan, you know, I mean, Dylan's like the, you know, he's Dylan. There's only one Dylan, and he's the boss.
We've got John Waite in our studios on tour for album 11. And
is it?
I guess you're not counting anymore?
No, I was. I thought it was more like 20, actually.
It feels like it, huh?
No, it's 20. Oh, wow, the solo records, it's 11. But if you put Bad English in there and the
That's
Babies,
true.
it gets to like 20 or 21.
Yeah, and
it's
40
insane.
years, right? 40
yeah, more than
years.
40 years. I think somebody's trying to make me look good, but I said it's 40 years. It's more like 43 or something, you know?
Well, you look great.
Oh, thank you.
And introduce the guys in the band.
On the stool.
In the stool?
Yeah, we couldn't bring a drum kit. They couldn't fit